Welcome back to Talk Tensors, everybody. Today we're going deep on WebWalker, benchmarking LLMs in web traversal. This paper really dives into a pretty crucial question with these RAG systems getting more and more advanced. Basically, how do we get LLMs to, actually navigate websites more like a human would?
It's a really interesting problem when you think about it. I mean, we're so used to search engines that kind of just skim the surface, right?
Right.
So what if an LLM could actually click through a website, follow links, piece together information from multiple pages? And that's what we're talking about here, that deep vertical exploration.
Yeah, it seems like even some of the heavy hitters like GPT-4, they're still struggling a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, the paper mentioned that performance on their new benchmark, WebWalker QA, was below 40%.
Yeah, that's right.
What were some of the challenges that they ran into? What were the LLMs struggling with specifically?
Well, one of the biggest things was this multi-step reasoning. The smaller LLMs in particular, they tended to get overwhelmed by the complexity, just navigating through multiple layers of a website, almost like they were trying to solve a maze but kept hitting dead ends, and they would give up too easily.
So it sounds like size does actually matter here.
It does, yeah.
The larger LLMs, because they have that greater capacity to handle context, were better equipped to kind of, handle those intricate web traversals.
Exactly. They were able to keep track of the information, make those connections between different pages, and ultimately piece together a more complete answer.
You mentioned WebWalker QA. Can you tell us a little bit more about this new benchmark data set and why it's so significant?
Yeah, so the researchers realized that a lot of these existing benchmarks, they weren't really designed to test this deep web traversal. So they created WebWalker QA specifically to evaluate an LLM's ability to, navigate these complex real-world websites. They chose websites from all sorts of different domains, conferences, educational institutions, organizations, things like that. Websites that typically have a lot of structured information that's kind of hidden beneath the surface.
Yeah, like an obstacle course for LLMs.
It is.
To test their ability to navigate complex menus, follow breadcrumbs, and synthesize information from multiple sources.
Exactly. And the questions in WebWalker QA, they're actually designed to reflect the types of queries that a human might actually ask, like, finding the total cost of attending a particular conference or figuring out the prerequisites for a certain course.
So it's not just about finding that one keyword on a page.
Yep.
It's about understanding the website structure, the relationships between different pieces of information.
Yeah, it's a much more realistic test of an LLM's ability to, understand and actually navigate the web.
And that's why the WebWalker framework itself is so interesting. Instead of just throwing a raw LLM at the problem,
Yeah.
they created a multi-agent system that tries to mimic how we approach web navigation.
Right.
You've mentioned this explore critic paradigm a couple of times. Can you kind of unpack that for us a little bit?
Yeah. It's an approach where you basically break down the task into two key roles. You have the explorer agent, which is responsible for actually doing the navigating through the website. So it looks at the page, looks at the links and decides which one to click on.
So it's like the scout.
It is. It goes out and explores the terrain, gathers information.
And then you've got the critic.
Right. The critic is kind of like the overseer.
Yeah.
It's constantly evaluating the information that the explorer is gathering, and it's asking, is this relevant? Do we have enough to answer the question, or do we need to keep going?
A delicate dance between exploration and analysis. That's right. You got to have a thorough explorer, but the critic has to keep them on task, not going down those rabbit holes.
Exactly. And that's really how it works. Even the most advanced LLMs, still have room for improvement.
Yeah.
But this WebWalker framework shows that there's a lot of promise in improving their ability to handle these complex queries.
So before we go any further, I'd like to understand the historical context here a little bit better.
Yeah.
What were some of the key developments that paved the way for this kind of research?
That's a great question. So the WebWalker paper, it really builds on this foundation of advancements in NLP and AI, particularly in RAG and early RAG systems. They were pretty basic. They really just relied on, keyword matching, that kind of thing.
As LLMs have become more sophisticated, researchers have started to explore different retrieval methods.
Right. Exactly. Things like semantic search and neural retrieval really changed the game. Instead of just matching keywords, these methods use these vector representations of text, and they're able to capture the meaning and relationships between words and concepts.
So now the system is actually trying to understand the query and not just the words themselves.
Exactly.
Seems like that's pretty crucial to answering those more complex questions.
Absolutely. And, this shift towards meaning-based retrieval allowed LLMs to go beyond retrieving information and start to reason about it, connect it together, and just give more coherent and informative responses.
It's like going from a simple dictionary lookup to actually understanding all the nuances of a complex text.
Exactly. And as these retrieval techniques got better and better, researchers started to tackle the challenge of multi-hop reasoning.
Right.
And that's, the ability to answer questions that require combining information from multiple sources, which, essential for deep web traversal.
Because in the real world, when you're trying to answer some of these really complex questions, the answer is not in just one place.
Right.
It's spread out. You have to gather from different sources and kind of synthesize it, draw your own conclusions.
All right. And that's where WebWalker comes in.
Yeah.
And it takes this to that next level by enabling LLMs to perform this deep web traversal.
So it's not just about retrieving multiple documents anymore.
Right. It's about navigating this intricate structure, finding the specific pieces of information you need to answer that question.
So WebWalker is really like this combination of years of research in RAG, semantic search, multi-hop reasoning. It's really fascinating how all these different areas have come together to make this kind of deep web traversal possible.
It really shows how science works, right? It builds on itself over time.
And that makes me really excited to explore some of the potential directions that this research could go. Which brings us to novel notions, but we're going to save that for after a quick break.
All right. Okay, so novel notions. This is where we get to kind of take these core ideas from the paper and see where they might lead in the future.
Right.
Just pure speculation, of course.
Yeah, I love this part.
But sometimes the craziest ideas, they end up leading to breakthroughs.
Yeah, it's like armchair research.
Exactly.
So WebWalker really focuses on the text and the website structure.
Right.
But the web is so much more than that these days, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if we started to bring in these other modalities into the picture?
You're thinking multimodal,
Yeah.
images, videos, audio.
Yeah.
Now that's where things could get really interesting. Think about a WebWalker agent that could analyze product photos and understand, not just what an item is, but its style, its aesthetic.
Right.
It could completely revolutionize online shopping.
Or think about the implications for research.
Yeah.
An LLM that can analyze charts and graphs from scientific papers, pull that data out, synthesize it with the text, and then draw new conclusions. That could accelerate discovery in so many fields.
Absolutely. And don't forget about accessibility.
Right.
A multimodal WebWalker could make the web so much easier to use for people with disabilities, like translating images into audio descriptions, for example.
So it's like we're giving these LLMs a whole new set of senses.
Yeah.
Allowing them to actually experience the web in a much richer way.
Exactly.
But wouldn't that also make the whole thing a lot more complex? How could you possibly design a system that could handle all of that information?
That's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
We would need much more sophisticated models, maybe even pulling in techniques from computer vision and audio processing.
Right.
But the potential is huge.
Yeah.
We're talking about an LLM that could understand a website just as well as a human can, taking in all those layers of information and, weaving them together.
Yeah, like going from reading a textbook to actually experiencing the subject firsthand.
Yeah.
With all the sights and sounds and even the emotions.
Exactly.
It could really change how we learn and how we interact with the world.
And speaking of experiencing the web, it makes me think about embodied AI.
Okay.
What if we took WebWalker a step further and actually gave these LLMs a body?
Like an avatar.
Yeah, like an avatar, or maybe even a robot that they could control.
Okay. What would be the point of that?
Well, it's about going beyond just observation, actually letting these agents interact with the web in a physical way.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine an LLM that could actually navigate a virtual shopping mall, browse through racks of clothing, even try things on virtually.
That sounds like a sci-fi movie.
It does, doesn't it?
But I see what you're saying. I mean,
Yeah.
that kind of embodied experience could really help them develop a deeper understanding of things like space and objects and relationships.
Exactly. It's about grounding their knowledge in a physical environment. And this could have huge implications for how we train these models.
Right.
We could build virtual worlds specifically designed for them to learn and experiment in, safe, controlled spaces.
So now we're not just talking about replicating the human web, We're talking about building this whole new digital ecosystem just for these AI agents to learn and grow.
Exactly. And as they get more advanced, they could start to actually contribute to that ecosystem themselves,
Yeah.
designing new websites, building tools, even collaborating with human developers.
A symbiotic relationship between humans and AI working together to kind of shape the digital world.
I like that.
But are we getting a little ahead of ourselves here? I mean, this sounds like a level of AI that's pretty far off.
Well, it's true that we're still early days,
Yeah,
but the pace of progress in AI is incredible. What seemed like science fiction just a few years ago is becoming reality.
it's true.
So who knows what the next few years will bring?
It's going to be a wild ride for sure.
Yeah.
But as we venture into this new territory, we really have to be careful.
Oh, absolutely.
Can't proceed responsibly.
Yeah, we need to think about the ethical implications of these technologies.
Right.
Make sure they're used for good and that we're protecting user privacy and all of that.
Yeah, it's a reminder that as we get more advanced with technology, we have to think about the ethical side of things as well.
Absolutely. A responsibility we all share.
This has been a really thought-provoking conversation.
It has.
It feels like we've just scratched the surface of what WebWalker and this whole line of research could lead to.
I agree. There's so much more to explore. I'm excited to see what other researchers come up with.
Before we wrap up, I do want to kind of just acknowledge how incredibly complex all of this research really is. The idea that we could have an LLM that can navigate the web like a human is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get caught up in all the possibilities.
Yeah.
But we're still a long way from that.
Yeah, there's still a lot of challenges ahead, both technical and ethical ones.
Yeah. But all the progress we've seen recently, I think, gives us some hope that we're headed in the right direction. And I think that's really the key takeaway here. Hope. The future of AI, it's full of potential. And even though there are going to be bumps along the way, the idea that we could create systems that can help us understand the world in new ways is really inspiring. So we've talked about, adding all these senses, giving LLMs virtual bodies, basically trying to make them more human in how they experience the web. But what if we kind of went in a different direction?
Okay. Yeah.
What if instead of just browsing, they could actually modify websites?
Oh, interesting. You're talking about LLMs that can write code.
Yeah.
We're already starting to see that, right?
Right.
LLMs that can generate basic scripts, even build simple websites. But imagine a WebWalker agent that comes across a form it needs to fill out.
Yeah.
It could write a little JavaScript to just automate that whole thing. Or if it needs data from a table that's not downloadable, it could write code to scrape it.
It's like giving them a set of digital tools,
Yeah.
letting them reshape the web. The research potential there is huge, right? I mean, think about an LLM that could automatically gather data from hundreds of websites, clean it, standardize it.
Oh, absolutely. It would revolutionize fields like economics, sociology, climate science. I mean, researchers spend so much time just, wrestling with data.
We're talking about accelerating scientific discovery, potentially.
Yeah, huge potential.
But of course, we have to talk about the elephant in the room.
Right.
Giving LLMs this kind of power sounds a little, I don't know, scary, maybe.
Yeah,
What about security risks?
of course. Yeah.
We don't want these things running amok, rewriting websites.
No, definitely not. That's where responsible development comes in.
Right.
It's not about giving them free rein. It's about figuring out how we can use these capabilities safely, maybe in controlled environments, or with human oversight.
So it's not about replacing humans, it's about augmenting them.
Exactly, giving them powerful tools to tackle these really hard problems.
Teams of scientists working alongside AI agents, each kind of playing to their strengths.
Right. That's the future, right?
That's a future I can get behind. It's been a really fascinating deep dive into the world of WebWalker. We've covered a lot today, from those challenges of deep web traversal to the potential for multimodal understanding, code-generating LLMs.
It really feels like the beginning,
Yeah.
There's so much more to discover, and I can't wait to see where it all goes.
And for our listeners, if you want to dig a little deeper, we'll include a link to the paper in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely check it out.
And until next time, keep those neurons firing, and we'll see you on the next episode of Talk Tensors.